Welcome to Barley and Hops. I'm George. Hey, got a lot going on today, and we're just so glad you're back with us. So please keep up. If you've seen all this before, go ahead and fast forward through it. But if not, slow it down or back it up or run it over again. Share it with your friends. Look, we're gonna empty some fast ferments, and the whole idea behind this is that look, I ran out of beer. I've got this going, and I've got 3 fast ferments in here. Of course, I've got all the distillate that I need, but this is the honey that I had left over. I had like 3.5 gallons of honey left over, so I split it into 3 separate fermenters, and I just wanted to ferment it quickly so I could have something to distill later. And well, it's taken about 4 weeks, and it's still working off. So, honey is just so viscous. It's really there's a complex variety of sugars in there that are all fermentable, and it just takes a while, so just bear with it. That's why mead makers will tell you, oh, it takes forever. You're right, it does. It takes a while. It can take us upwards to 3 to 6 months to get a good mead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer this out into some other containers that I can store in the back room and allow them to just sit for a while, and that's going to free up these fast ferments. So what we're going to do is we're going to empty the fast ferment. I get a chance to show you all of that, which is real simple. But then we're going to go through the cleaning process real quick. And if you've done this before, just go ahead and buzz through it. Go to the cleaning process, and then we're going to make a couple of beers. But we're going to go way back to the real simple basics. For those who are wondering, I mean, do I have to go through all the boiling process? Do I have to have all those grains? Do I have to have all that? No, you really don't. We're going to do a real simple beer. As a matter of fact, we're going to do 2 of them because I ran out of both kegs. We had a party last weekend, and we got empty kegs, so it's time to do something. All right, look, my fast ferments, I've got the blanket around it, and I'm able to maintain, I can drop 16 to 20 degrees or so from the ambient temperature, which means that I no longer have to leave the air conditioner on at night in the store when I go home in order to maintain anywhere between 68 and 74 degrees for my yeast to be healthy. Right now, what I can do is I've got this bag, and I'll show you this as we open it up. This is the jacket, and the jacket fits around the outside and zippers up, and you put plastic bottles of frozen water in there, and that maintains that temperature. And all I got to do is switch the bottles out every day or two, and I can maintain a really low temperature inside the bag, regardless of what the outside ambient temperature is in the store. So, gosh, I'm making beer and I'm saving money at the same time because I'm not paying for all that electricity I'm using for air conditioner overnight. My airlock, you'll notice that I'm using the double bubble airlock. And there's another one called a 3-piece airlock, but I'm using the double bubble because it's really the more traditional. It's an old-fashioned one. So you've got your CO2 that comes in and pushes the water down and pushes it up on this side and then bubbles out the top. And that prevents anything from going back inside. But you'll notice that I've got positive pressure in here. And the way you can tell that is there's more water on one side on the out portion than there is on the in portion. So right now I can see my water line is way down here in the bottom. If I give it a shake, I can probably make it bubble. There it goes. You see it bubble, and then it'll just fall back. So when you've got more water on one side than you do the other, you know you've got positive pressure on the inside of your fermenter. And what that means to you, think about it, what that means to you is that definitely there's no oxygen in there. It's definitely not balanced with the atmosphere. There's more pressure inside your fermenter than there is outside your fermenter, although just a slight amount, but just enough to keep anything from going back in. So it's just like having a puff inside your fermenter. And this will remain there. Now, you'll find that after a period of time, after your fermentation is done, sometimes this will level out and balance, and that's quite all right. And sometimes it'll end like mine has here. I know I have no real fermentation happening, but I've got positive pressure, which means my fermenter is really sealed up really well. And it'll stay there. You may get, and we've talked about this before, people will tell me, they'll call me, they'll say, my airlock, I'll walk by it, and about every 20 or 30 minutes or so, I'll get a blurp. Or they'll tell me, use a bubble about once every, or 100 times a second. Now it's bubbling once every 45 seconds or so. Well, stop and think about this. Once every 45 seconds or so, you still may have some residual fermentation taking place. But in most cases, when it comes to a beer, a wine, or a mash, it's separate from a honey. but a beer, wine, or a mash, which are made from standard fermentable sugars, most of your fermentation happens in about the first 96 hours or so. After that, a lot of settling is taking place. So you'll get some residual CO2. Listen, open up a can of Coke and lay it out. What happens to that Coke after about 8 or 10 hours? Well, it goes flat. And that's because all the CO2 that's in there that makes it carbonated leaves. And so it naturally wants to do that. CO2 naturally wants to leave a liquid that it's in, especially if it's warm. So think of it like that. Think of your fermenter as like a can of Coke. After fermentation happens, you've got a lot of residual CO2 that's been absorbed into those molecules, and that's floating around in there. It's captured inside that volume. That CO2 wants to leave. It wants to escape, and it's going to. But it needs to build up a little bit of pressure, so it'll start to escape little by little. And about every minute or 2 or 3, maybe every 15 minutes, you'll get bloop, it'll blurp. And that's really your residual CO2 that's just escaping. So you don't necessarily have an active fermentation taking place. What you've got more than likely is just residual CO2 that's escaping. All right, so now having explained that, what I have here is I've just got positive pressure, which means that really all my CO2 is probably gone except for the stuff I just shook out. And I've just got a blanket of CO2 sitting in there, and it's a little bit more, it's stronger than the outside 14 psi, pounds per square inch, which is standard atmospheric pressure. So, I didn't want to go that far into it, but sorry about that, but we did. We can't help it. All right, let's move on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up, and this thing just zippers open. And once we get this unzippered, I'll just remove that airlock. I don't need that any longer. That's amazing, and that's the honey. And I've got just shy of 5 gallons. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove the ball. I'm going to readjust the camera so you can see all this, but we're going to remove the ball. We're going to dump that. I'm going to show you what's in there, oh, by the way, because it's been sitting in here for, I've already dumped the ball once, and that was after the first 7 days. And so it's been in here for now for about another 3 weeks. Hey, what I've got with me is I've got one of these water bottles. These are really excellent because they are food grade to a degree. I wouldn't try to ferment anything with a really high gravity, but once you finish fermentation and you want to put it in here for storage, they're excellent. Plus they're a whole lot easier to maneuver and move around as opposed to those great big glass carboys. But if you're fermenting, please stick with glass or stick with the fast ferment that's designed for that as opposed to these. Now here, okay, I'll answer the question. Will it work? Absolutely. Are there any dangers? There's dangers inherent with everything that you do. So these are good for storage more so than for fermenting. All right. And then I've got, of course, I got another airlock. And this is the double bubble airlock I was telling you about. And there's one that's already balanced. So you can see that I got water. The water level on both sides is actually exactly the same. So this is because it's balanced with the outside atmosphere. All right. Hey, and by the way, just a teaser for later on, we're getting ready to do another one of those, hey, let's check this out kind of video. And I've got some heater elements. Because, we built some PID controllers so we can control the heating process in our stills. And, we've got some other stills out there. They're not necessarily the standard stills that we carry. And I'm going to try to help you out a little bit and show you how to wire these up. This is a double, and this is a single. One of them, this one is a 4,500 watt, 240 volt, and this is the 120 volt, 2,000 watt. So we're going to show you how to wire these up and make these work inside your still. All you got to do is get them into the still, sealed, and we'll show you how to wire them up. That's why we got them, but that's for a future videos coming up. All right, let's get this thing all adjusted, and we'll move on to bigger and better things. All right, without any further ado, let's turn our valve off. And what I brought with me is, I brought this 1 gallon plastic jug that I cut the top out of. That's kind of what I use to move around with. We'll take this bottom ball off. And then this is where all of that excess yeast is captured that has been settling out. Oh yeah, you can smell it too. If you smell it, look. And Yeah, if you taste it, there'll be a sour taste to it, and you'll also notice like a sour smell, and that smell is normal. It's supposed to be that way. So that goes back to our original question. I think we solved or tried to resolve before, which was, has it turned to vinegar? No, it hasn't turned to vinegar. Now let's pour this out, and you'll notice how mucky that becomes. And I can see all the solids. There they are. Look at that. Those real dark solids. And you can see inside that as well. That you can see there's a bunch of stuff left in there, and that's all the solid settlement that's settled out of there, to include some old yeast. And this yeast is still alive. It's just waiting for some more sugars to start to consume. So your yeast never dies. It doesn't unless you overheat it. It won't die. It'll just sit there and wait. It'll hibernate until you give it some more to eat. Now, it is going to beg the question, is there a point of no return? And absolutely. I mean, after you get the alcohol content is so constant or so high, like 22% or so, it is really, really hard to find a yeast that can survive in that environment. So they don't necessarily die. They just give up and go away. All right, I'm going to attach the, this is the bottle filler. And I'll screw that on there. And as soon as I open that valve, that's going to shoot through here, through this hose. And we're going to fill up the 5-gallon water jug that I've got here. And that has already been cleaned out, and I already sprayed my star sand in there. So you can see I got a little bit of residual star sand in there. I'll probably dump that off. That's probably just a couple of drops. So we'll be with you in just a moment. Yeah, I removed this smaller hose, the one that comes with the fast ferment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this hose through here. And this is just a longer piece of hose that I got laying around. And I'm going to attach this to the bottom of that valve. Here we go. Then we're going to open my jug. And that's my standard siphoning hose. You've seen me use that before. I've got the end sliced off. So there we go. And no airlock, so I've got atmosphere going in, and I've got all of this running out into this jug. Now what will happen here let me set this up a little bit. There, back with you. We're draining, and I've got probably 2 gallons in there so far. It's filling up. When we're finished, later on, I'll add my turbo clear, which is part A and part B. And this is the stuff I use to clear. It'll clarify everything. And I'll do this to all 3 batches at some point in time. I'm not in any hurry to get to it right now. I'll probably just seal it off and put it in the back room, let it sit for a while. But I'll use my turbo clear, especially prior to putting it into the still, so I make sure that it's as crystal clear as I could possibly get it before it goes into the still. So I'll set this aside. We'll finish filling this. I'll move it into the back room, and then we're going to start the cleaning process, and I'll show you how George cleans it. There's 1,000 ways to do this. This just happens to be the way I found it is the most convenient and the easiest way for me to actually keep it clean, because I've been using this one for a little over 2 years, and it's still serving me well. So we're just about ready to close off the valve, and you can see that I'm down to, wow, way down to the bottom of this. I'm almost finished, so I'll be with you just shortly, and we'll get started to cleaning. Well, you can see that we've moved into the back room. This is kind of where, this is my brew laboratory in a way. I got stuff all over the place, but it's just a lot of fun back here. And so look, all I'm going to do now is just remove this hose that I've used. There we go. And if I balance this hose out right, I won't spill a whole lot. There we go. Oh, that's not going to happen. It's not going to allow me to. There we go. And the reason I'm making such a mess here is evidently I did not account for running it through that, so I'll put it in that bucket. So that's removed. We're going to have to clean that up here in just a second too. So let me lay this aside. I gotta get this fast ferment out of this stand. There we go. Oh yeah, now you're gonna be a pain. There we go. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult because I put that valve on the side, that spigot. Now I've used that spigot quite a bit, but 6 1/2 dozen the other. I'm not real sure that I'm totally sold that I needed it, but it's nice to have. I don't have any objections to it, but it comes in handy when I'm doing wine. But when I'm doing anything else, it really is. It's more in the way than anything. Okay. Well, the first thing we'll do is we're just going to spray through it and give it a rinse. Open up the valve. Rinse it off. Now, I feel kind of odd showing you how I'm cleaning this, but trust me, somebody will say, well, George, they'll ask a question about how we did this. I just figured I'd show it to you because it's just as easy to show you than it is to try to describe it. Now, look, I'm going to use Sea Bright. There's a bunch of different cleaners. I use Sea Bright. I've used Be Bright. The difference between the two, Sea Bright is a chlorine base, Be Bright's not. It's whatever really trips your trigger. You can actually use regular dish soap. There's a laundry list of cleansers that you can use, especially if you get to it right away, because it's really, really easy to clean at that point. If you wait for several weeks and then you've got things caked on there, and you're gonna have a hard time cleaning it. And remember, always use Star Sand when you're finished just to sterilize, but you can't sterilize a dirty container. So make sure you clean it. And it's not that hard to do. So, direct 2 ounces, a clean object with 2 ounces of Sea Bright per 2.5 gallons of water. And this is a 1 pound, so this is 16 ounces. So I'll use 2 ounces of this, and I'm gonna drop that in there. Now what you'll be surprised about is, and let me see, I got that. Yeah, turn the valve off on the bottom, and I'm gonna add the warm water in here. Now I recommend this for those of you who have never cleaned like this before. This may be something new, but I'm just going to throw a bunch of water in there first. And I learned this years and years ago, and it really has paid off well. And that is that the easiest way to clean something, believe it or not, is with the hand. Your hand is very, very sensitive. Your fingers are very, very sensitive, and you can really feel. Besides that, they won't scratch anything. And you can feel if there's anything stuck inside there, you'll feel it. You'll feel it way, way before you see it. So I use my hand, and that way I guarantee that I can stick my fingers into this valve, into the spigot, and I don't even have to look. I can feel my way around the inside of that fast ferment. And plus I'm making sure I'm guaranteed I'm getting a really good clean out of it. Now one other thing, and yep, get it all good and clean. One other thing that I recommend is if you have an opportunity is to take there we go, that's exactly what I was looking for with the bucket, is to take your valve off of the bottom. We'll save that. That's good cleanser. Yep, and you'll notice the smell right away, and especially if there's an off smell. Now, I take this bottom valve off almost each time. Very seldom do I leave it on, but I normally take it off and clean. And the reason I do that is because a little bit of that will leak through and get into these threads, and you'll be able to feel it, and yeah, you'll be able to smell it. If it's there, you'll be able to smell it, especially if you leave it there and you don't clean it off. You'll be able to smell it after a period of time. Now, just work your valve back and forth and get that cleaned out. Of course, we're going to clean the lid, along with the lid's gasket, and every bit of this will be rinsed off, and we'll be ready. I'll put this back together. We'll step back outside. I'll spray my Star Sand. I'll allow that to run out and clean, and then we're going to start making beer. So we'll be with you shortly. Okay, all all the cleaning and rinsing has been taken care of. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some more thread tape on here. And the way you do this, now here is the ball valve, and the ball valve goes on and it turns to the right. Remember, righty tighty, lefty loosey. That's the way I remember it anyway. And just make sure you put your thread tape on the same way. You're going to put it on and going to the right. Do it clockwise. So all I do is just put the thread tape there and wrap it around, and you only need one and just a little bit, and that's just to keep it from moving. So one piece of thread tape. Don't overdo it, because if you overdo it, what's going to happen is it's going to be so hard to get that thread tape off later, because each time you clean it, you want to make sure you peel the old thread tape, because if you leave the old thread tape on there, that's already soaked up with anything that's leaked through there, and it's going to start to smell. And believe me, if you have any problems with your fast ferment, chances are it's more likely than not it's going to be this thread, or it's going to be the side thread on your spigot, or it might even be, and I've got one here, it might even be your thermal well. And you'll see that's an old thermal well I took out, and it's brass, so it turns dark because it'll tarnish, but it'll be these threads around the thermal well. So just be really, really careful with it, and clean it each time, and put a small piece of thread tape on there. Screw this back together. Now, hey, the other reason why I've turned it back on, because we're getting ready to go to part 2. And part 2 is going to be when we get back outside, we actually start making the beer again. But I wanted to show you this. I'm getting ready to dump. Remember that ball that we had? I'm going to dump this, and you'll see how dark that is. And then it gets to the point to where it's all that solid yeast that's left over. Just thought you might see that. Hey, we'll be with you in just a few minutes. We're going to start part 2, so stay with us.